Welcome to the Peak Central Asian Film Festival podcast, a companion to the annual celebration of cinema from Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Western China, Western Mongolia, Central and Eastern Russia, Eastern Iran, and Northern Pakistan, or from filmmakers whose country of origin is one of the above, including members of the diaspora. This podcast continues the conversation sparked by the festival through interviews with filmmakers, features on standout submissions and winners, and deep dives with fans and scholars of Central Asian film. Join us as we explore the region's diverse narratives and connect with the people shaping its cinematic future. I'm Tim, and today I'm with my co-host, Tay. How you doing, Tay?
I'm doing just fine, Tim. Today is a great day for the podcast because we actually have our first interviewee.
Yeah, today we're really excited because we have a filmmaker whose work was featured at the second year of the Peaks Film Festival, this most recent one in April that we saw, and her film will also be shown in June here in St. Catharines at the Niagara Artists Center. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about them. Assel Akhmetova, whose pronouns are she, her, is a Toronto-based director, writer, and film editor with a passion for exploring new forms of cinema and storytelling. Her most recent work, FACELESS, is an experimental sci-fi dramedy, and it premiered at the Toronto Real Asian International Film Festival. Her previous projects include I Want to Live from 2024, a documentary that premiered at the United Nations in New York, and a feature screenplay, When Peonies Bloom from 2023, which was pitched at Hot Docs Ted Rogers Cinema. Assel Akhmetova holds a BA with honors in film and media production and is an experienced film and video editor. Hi, Assel. Thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much, guys, for hosting me today. It's such a wonderful day to have this podcast episode recording. So thanks so much, Tim and Tay.
Absolutely, our pleasure. We've really wanted to engage more with filmmakers. And after seeing your film in Toronto last month, or I guess almost 2 months ago now, it's been kind of top of mind, and we have a lot of good questions, I think, here for you, or at least questions that we were really hoping to ask you. I got to meet you a bit in person after the screening, and it was really exciting to kind of line this all up. So I don't know if we want to start right at the top. I guess we can just start with our questions, right?
I was wondering, actually, and I know, a little BTS, we did prepare a question list and share it with Assel and make sure everything was above board, but I wonder if we might kick off the discussion with something we didn't mention, and of course we'll cut this out if it doesn't work for you, but Assel, can you tell us about your experience at Peaks this year? What did you think of the screenings? How did you enjoy the night?
Oh, sure. So Peaks, for me, was such a pleasant surprise. So I've met with one of the founding directors, Sophia. We were actually together going through a film program, and sadly I've missed the first year of Peaks, but I was so glad. It was my honor and pleasure to attend and actually have my short screened on its second year. So I fell in love with the selection. One of the shorts actually became one of my favorite ones. And I enjoyed the Q&A panel at the end. So that was just wonderful.
Yeah, you got to be on stage a bit there, right? You got to be featured in some of the stage. Like, I know it wasn't entirely centered around you, but you were part of the discussion afterwards.
Yeah, I know. It was very nerve-wracking speaking in front of the strangers, but I was really glad to be a part of it. And I was really happy whenever anyone in the audience, the viewers were laughing during the screening of my film. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when Tim introduced your film there, it's multi-genred, and when I was rewatching your film,
yeah,
that was actually what stood out to me the most. Is it is such a blend of genres, and I definitely want to dive into more about how you kind of arrived at that point. So, without further ado, I guess we can start with our first question, which is kind of why filmmaking for you? This is, from what I understand, your third film. And, stories can be told in so many different ways. So what drew you to the art of filmmaking specifically?
So, thinking about this question, I've always been drawn to the arts, and storytelling in all its forms. I loved reading, writing, so anything creative. But for me, when in high school, I was introduced to Sony Vegas. That was my turning point. So, yeah, basically, this editing software, it was part of the curriculum. And honestly, I instantly fell in love with the craft of editing. So that was kind of my starting point. And if you've ever seen, if you've ever watched any of these short anime kind of edits, and you've kind of wondered, like, who makes this? So yeah, I was that person. And at the time, as a huge anime fan, I loved editing, and basically everything clicked when I got my first video camera, a Panasonic camcorder. So that was kind of my starting point. And why filmmaking? So basically, it's very simple, maybe complex at the same time, but basically for me, filmmaking is the perfect blend of art and technology. And that was when I realized, yeah, this was the path I want to take.
Okay, so
that's really great to hear.
Funny.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that, like, when we get deeper into talking about Faceless, I was going to note that I'd say among its, many strengths, one of the most notable, I think, is how keenly edited it is. So it draws you into your character's perspective. There's a lot of use of close-ups of their eyes and following what they're looking at and how they're reacting things. And I found it to be a very editing first production, which I say in an entirely complimentary way, because as we talked about on our other podcasts and things like that, editing is unique and key to cinema. So that's really just grounding to hear that was sort of where you started with it.
Thanks, Tim. So, I think there are many folks who started filmmaking because maybe they loved writing or they loved filming. But I haven't met many people who actually loved editing, but I think I've mostly met people who actually hate editing. So thank you so much. It's one of the, it's one of the biggest compliments for me about Faceless. And there are actually a couple of fun facts, especially about editing, that we can dive into later.
Well, funny enough, I actually started, my first ever film was edited on Sony Vegas too, and I think I've only gone up from there in terms of the software I've been able to get a hold of. But that's funny, we had the same starting point, because Sony Vegas kind of changed my life in the sense that, like, I realized I could actually edit something that I put together and film myself. So that's really cool. Were you in school when you picked up Sony Vegas?
Yes. So I think I was around grade 9 or so, and basically it was part of the curriculum. And I think we also had an assignment to film something like a short film. So after that, I realized how fun it is. So that's how I started filming and filmmaking as well.
So you were hooked right away.
Yes, exactly. I think the reason why I was so deep into editing this kind of short anime videos is because it was like a tool. We're using these shots or scenes to kind of explore this or that emotion, simply because I didn't have any cast, any obviously budget or even a camera. So that was kind of like my creative outlet. And now here we are. I'm on a podcast, Mom. I made it. Thank you, Tim and Tay and Peaks Festival.
Of course. What sort of early edits were you doing? What animes were you cutting up and remixing and reinterpreting?
So honestly many. I think there were some kind of experimental ones that I really loved. I really loved, for example, Attack on Titans and a few other anime. And I remember I was also sitting in these Facebook groups, And I was posting my videos and I was collecting feedback. For example, what do you think about this transition or that transition? So that was kind of funny. And yeah, this is basically how it all started.
That's really cool that you could find a community for feedback like that online, right? Like, was there, when you started in school around grade 9 or wherever, was it actually in, like, was there a like a videography class or things like that? Like, I know the high school that I went to, there was a class that produced a weekly news show, and they used that sort of as a product for the students to learn things like filming and editing and all the things that go into filmmaking, but they had that weekly sort of product. Were you in something formal like that in class, or did you pick this up as a hobby?
Oh, wow. First of all, this idea is so cool. Basically, how this class was organized in your school, but in my case, it was part of the computer science class. And after learning some very, I guess, basic kind of programming softwares, they were experimenting with the curriculum, and this software was also like a part of it. And I guess it was also a fun way to make students engaged into their projects. So I remember at the beginning it was a little challenging, but at some point after editing so many anime videos, I kind of learned how Sony Vegas is. And then when I found it a bit limiting, I moved to Premiere Pro and then, and then Avid.
Yeah, that's the natural progression right there.
Yes.
For the editing.
Yeah, so, but Sony Vegas is always, it's in my heart. It's there.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It sounds like you almost had, like, because I think I can speak from personal experience as an editor early on. I just wanted to make content, and the only way that I could do it without, like you said, budgets and actors and all these other expensive resources was to just be an editor and pick clips from online and drop them in and edit them and cut it together. But I think that shows early signs of wanting to direct. Did you know you wanted to direct from early on?
So I guess I had this idea. I remember that whenever some of my friends had birthdays and we were kind of filming this short, I guess, birthday videos, I loved kind of directing them, but in my head at that time, it was all just fun. And I was kind of thinking more about editing as a future career rather than directing.
Okay.
Yeah, but with time and with some ideas that I wanted to explore, and these ideas appearing in my mind, I started directing. I directed 2 shorts so far, and one of them was produced during college. Another film, a short documentary, was produced after college, and basically FACELESS. So FACELESS is my first fiction, so it's very special for me.
Yeah, can you tell us about the first short that you did, like the first time you were editing footage that you directed, that you sort of oversaw, and that, was obviously your source. It wasn't using clips from anime, and wasn't something as necessarily simple or as potentially simple as a birthday highlight video.
Yeah, sure. So there are actually, I guess, 2 parts, 2 answers to this question. So first of all, when I was applying to several colleges here in Toronto, as a part of the application process, I created 2 of my very first short films, and one of them was experimental, another one was fiction. So both of them both of them, I would say, were actually my very, very, very first films that maybe they're still on YouTube, but I never, never really showed them to anyone. And I think so many artists, like every artist or every filmmaker has this like one very first piece that like almost nobody watched. So this is kind of one of my very first films. And another one was produced in college. So when I went to Humber, and we were working on a couple of short films, and my idea was selected. So basically it's a documentary. It's a short documentary kind of exploring the male gaze in cinema and all the Hollywood stereotypes that are so popular in so many old and not so much old movies. So yeah, it was a short documentary, a very small production. I remember it was during COVID or very like slightly after COVID. So it was a very small crew, 5 amazing people from my college program, and it was screened during, I think, college screening, but I never really had the kind of, I guess, the belief to apply it further to other festivals. So it's kind of there on my laptop.
And is this the film I Want to Live, the one that premiered at the United Nations?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Just wanted to, we can cut that part out. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah.
I'll just lead that into a question there. So you have had a film called I Want to Live that premiered at the United Nations in New York.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that experience? Like, did you get to attend that premiere?
Oh, sure, of course. So, all right. So basically, this project started in Kazakhstan. So I was hired for a project, a short documentary that kind of expanded to like longer 40 minutes documentary exploring the tragedy and tragic implications of the nuclear test site, which was located in Kazakhstan. And basically, I was hired for this project. We were interviewing and filming victims around in villages and in the town where the test site was located. So basically, I also edited myself. And after that, this project was premiered at the United Nations in New York. Unfortunately, I could not attend this screening, unfortunately, at the time. So, yeah, it was premiered during one of the screenings, kind of exploring this idea of nuclear abolishment and focusing on tragic implications of it.
That sounds actually very fascinating. If possible, like I know I can speak for myself, I'd really love to see that if there's a link that you can provide or something like that.
Me too.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll definitely send you guys the link.
Great.
And we'll definitely we should check in this again. I'll cut this out, but we should check. Are any of your films, especially Faceless, are they available for the public to view online anywhere right now, or are they still sort of in the process of trying to get them into more festivals?
So it's still in the festival run, but if you would like, whenever it will be available for the general public, I'll let you guys know. But I think for the next year or maybe year and a half or so, yeah, it's going through its festival run.
That's no problem. I just wanted to check before we hopped into the discussion about it. And I'll make a note. I'll say something near the end of our discussion that it's currently in its festival run. So we'll let you know if it's being shown at a festival, and we'll share that info. And then otherwise, of course, We'll at the end we'll talk about where people can follow you if you have an Instagram account. And of course, people can find out there when your films become available for the general public.
Sure, sounds great. Thank you.
Tay, did you have a jumping off point from there to hop back in?
I can, but if you have a direction you want to go.
No, you go for it. No, I'm all good.
So you've done documentary, you've done films that have crossed into multiple genres. You strike me as somewhat of a film buff. Do you watch a lot of movies, and does that inform you and the way you direct?
So, I am a huge fan of movies, of course, and I think that because I do watch a variety of genres, I know that there are some people who are super passionate about this one specific genre, and for me it's different. So I think it does definitely affect my vision. So speaking of Faceless and its focus on blending in between of multiple genres, I got very inspired by Everything Everywhere All at Once movie, in which they heavily used intertextuality. So basically, multiple movie references upcycled to deliver some other idea. And I was very passionate about that, about this idea of kind of upcycling some pop culture references, something very relatable to almost any viewer, to deliver an idea. Yeah. So to cut a long story short, watching a bunch of different genres definitely, I guess, shapes my vision in a way that it's something very intuitive and subconscious. So a lot of things that you watched or experienced yourself, and then one day you're just coming up with this idea. So this is how I would explain this process, if it makes sense.
No, that's very well said.
Yeah, no, totally. And with that, like, why don't we get into that idea itself, which is the film that you had featured at Peaks this year. It's called Faceless. Can you get us into it? Tell us the premise and yeah, like where. I mean, you sort of talked about how that idea was an amalgamation of all these different influences and stuff, but if there's any sort of concrete starting point that you can talk about that led to the premise and, of course, detail that premise, let's start talking about Faceless.
Sure. So, Faceless is a short film about a burnt-out writer who uses AI to deliver a script, only to discover the true essence of human creativity. So basically, I came up with this idea. I think it would be a year and a half ago. So as a film and video editor, all these recent conversations around AI at that time felt super overwhelming and honestly kind of terrifying. So there was this fear of being replaced, especially I would say in the editing industry, and this fear of creativity being devalued. So when I saw that this amazing festival, Toronto International Relations Festival, was accepting applications for their film program, and their theme at the time was hope, I got this idea. So basically I wanted to create something helpful and something that could resonate with both artists and art lovers, and that's when the idea for Faceless was born. So it follows a screenwriter facing a creative block, and it kind of captures, in the short 9 minutes, it captures her journey from her creative block to her liberation. So she reconnects with the roots of her passion and kind of starts living from a place of curiosity, instead of fear and self-criticism. Yeah, so it became a personal piece for me, and it's not just about storytelling, but also about what it means to keep creating in uncertain times.
Yeah, well, I think maybe the first thing that stood out to me is how you incorporated AI into your story. It's something that I think a lot of people in our industry are living in fear of and are trying to exercise those fears creatively. And I think like your short is one of the first films I saw really dive into that in like a very cohesive way. I think through your actor's performance and the way you edited this film, you really get a sense of true writer's block in a way that, you know, I think it can kind of become an overused convention in films, but like having like a writer who's struggling with writer's block. But I think the way you captured it and incorporated the AI aspect, it made it very modern and also very like relevant to people today and people's fears. And yet you kind of also had like a horror tone to this. There's horror, there's dramedy aspects to this. So you kind of are combining like people's like fears with just people's awareness of these conventions as well. And I thought that was really well done.
Oh, thank you so much. So, I'm very, very glad to hear that, because it's kind of the result that I was aiming for, to kind of bring back the hope, because obviously artificial intelligence does not have feelings and experiences and does not have something that you do, that nobody else on this planet does but you. So it's interesting how the movie started with kind of more blurry idea, I would say, but it became more personal. So basically, it became less about AI, but more about something personal, or this feeling of fear, I would say, or fear of being not good enough or being replaced. So I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of mirrored in the arc of your main character as well, right? That the uncertainty appears to go from being a challenge or a source of fear to actually a feature, you know, not a bug. That it's a core part of humanity to be unsure. I found it to be reflected right there.
That's actually a beautiful interpretation. So it's interesting that at some point this piece felt more existential for me.
Right. Yeah.
So you're very, very straight to the point and to the core of it.
Well, and I wanted to ask about how you selected. So, you know, we'll talk through what happens in this short and when it is available, and later in the show we'll tell our listeners at home, we'll make sure you know how to follow Assel and keep an eye on her work and things like that. But right now, FACELESS is in its festival run, so it's not available for the general public. So we will talk through some details, but regardless of how much you know about it, you should definitely check it out when it's available or when it's at a festival local to you. What I want to talk about, one of the things I wanted to talk about was that in the short, the AI suggests 3 potential ways you could take this story, where it just sort of plagiarizes very popular movies, and the movies it suggests are Forrest Gump and The Matrix and Everything Everywhere All at Once. And while I have a personal take on sort of a unifying factor of those movies, I am curious about how you came about picking them, because I could just as much see it being a matter of it's easy to use the iconography like the red hat or the pills or the googly eye as it is their themes. So I'm curious where you went about picking those.
So for me, it was actually a very interesting and hard process to pick. It was a very challenging question, because I was aiming to find a selection of movies, and because I wanted to have this film very short, under 10 minutes or so, I could only pick a maximum of 3 films, and something that would be very, I guess, easily recognizable, and something at the same time that I would be able to reflect or to say refer to. So I would say that I've picked these three films because they were, I would say that, first of all, they're one of my favorite movies. So that was like one of the biggest reasons. And also another reason, which is a big one, is that I loved the variety of genres. So there was a little bit of sci-fi from The Matrix, and drama and comedy from, for example, Everything Everywhere All at Once or Forrest Gump, and something that would be recognizable by a variety of, like, something that would be easily recognizable by several generations, I would say. So being extremely tight on a budget, it kind of fueled the creativity, how to create a reference that would be recognizable in less than 5 seconds, in less than, oh, sorry, I'll just re-record that. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay.
So, being very tight on a budget, it kind of fueled the creativity. All right, how we can refer to this or that movie in less than 10 seconds, in a very, very short sequence and span of time. So, basically, I chose these three films because they were kind of filling all this criteria. But it was a very tough choice.
They had to be functional, which makes total sense, and that would have been my guess. But I do like, and this may just be hot air, but I like the idea that all three of those films do sort of suggest add a secret nature to existence, right? Like Forrest Gump is sort of the secret history of the United States and how one man influenced them unintentionally. And of course, Matrix is about the hidden nature of your reality, and to a degree, so is Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I like that there is a hidden revelation of the self in each of those, and I think that is to a degree reflected in your screenwriter's journey as well. And whether that is by chance or subconscious, it's something that I love that continues to happen in film between the filmmaker's intentions and what ends up on screen.
So I absolutely love this take, Tim. It's absolutely beautiful, and it makes me actually resonate with my choice even more. So thank you. Yeah,
it was in you all along. It was all subconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was an artistic choice. So I would say that the biggest factor, one of the biggest factors, was the budget. And it's interesting how your tight budget actually makes you push the boundaries as much as you can. And at the end of the day, it's such a hard craft, but such a beautiful thing.
That's one of the things that I always come back to with the smaller budget movies, is that you get a sense that, and just from personal experience too, smaller budgets do force you to be creative and come up with creative ways to overcome obstacles and problems. So I always think that some of the best films kind of are generated because they came in with such low budgets and had to find creative ways around those issues.
100%, absolutely.
So, Assel, how long did it take you to produce your film? Like, was it kind of just you producing it, doing all the post-production, or did you have a team working with you as well?
Yeah, so it's actually a very interesting question, because the turnaround for this short was incredibly quick, because it was a part of the Real Asian Festival's film program, Unsung Voices, and it has its own schedule. So because of that, the turnaround was around 4 or 5 months, and I've actually locked my screenplay in a month or so, starting with only a very blurry vision of an idea, I would say. And then we had 2 shoot days in 2 different locations, and it was actually my personal record. Because I was also editing it myself, I picture locked the edit in 2 weeks. And then
Wow.
the color.
Wow.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's actually incredibly helpful to know your idea very well and know what you're working with, and I guess maybe some experience in editing. So yeah, so that was one of the fun facts. And then color and sound basically took some time, but it was produced in a very incredibly quick turnaround. So basically, I've directed the piece, wrote it, and then edited it. And my actually very good friend and a very talented filmmaker, his name is Mateo Zambrano. So he produced it with me, and yeah, so that's like a few sentences about the production itself.
Yeah, that's a very impressive timeline that you were able to get picture lock within. I know like color and sound are a whole different animal in terms of editing, but like getting picture lock in 2 weeks is pretty impressive. Like just jumping off of that point, your sound editing kind of ties in with this idea of being intertextual that you mentioned earlier, or being like self-reflexive and understanding your audience's awareness of other films. I noticed a couple times you used kind of a horror equivalent score to try and provoke the audience, and then you quickly turn it into comedy beats sometimes. But you're very aware of what you're doing with your horror stings with your music. Was that something you always wanted to incorporate in your edit, or was that something that came together as you were editing?
Exactly. So it's a very short answer. So exactly, this was my goal, to keep it quite fast-paced, I would say, entertaining. So I would say not only movie fans or art connoisseurs would enjoy it, but also maybe younger generations of viewers who may have a shorter attention span. So basically, keep the movie maybe quite fast-paced. And also, I really enjoyed playing around with genres. So the sound design, and then working with the composer on music so basically everything was intentional. And I assume that some sound effects, some sounds that you may consider as sound effects, were actually written by a composer. So
Gotcha.
it all was intentional, and I'm actually very glad to hear that.
Yeah, overall, the movie just flows very well. I like what you said about keeping it fast-paced. I think that's how you entice the younger generations and younger audiences. But like, because I think your themes kind of attract that generation anyways. So I think the way you chose to edit your film corresponds with that quite nicely.
Thank you. So it took some time. I would say the longest component of editing for me was actually collecting feedback. And it was very helpful. If any of the shots may be dragging, or, for example, as a director and also / writer, I may be personally attached and biased to some of the moments.
Absolutely,
or some
yeah.
shots. Yeah, so I would say that one of the components of the processes that took the longest was collecting feedback. And it was actually an extremely important thing.
I very much agree with that. it can change a lot based on like how you see your own bias affecting the editing and getting other people's opinions, or if you don't get the right reaction from somebody, then you know something's got to change. I love that. I love hearing that because I don't think a lot of directors are that willing and forthcoming to feedback.
Yeah, I understand that. But for me, honestly, working on Faceless was less for my own self, but more for other people. And while it was actually hard to basically sacrifice something, like sacrifice your ambitions or something, basically your darlings or your loved ones, while it was hard, it was actually incredibly worth it, as long as the audiences kind of achieve the emotional result, I would say, or outcome that I was aiming for. Everything was worth it.
That's really encouraging to hear, because I think, I feel like a lot of people would, and I've heard, indie directors and people who are making shorts say that like one of the main upsides is that you kind of have control over your vision, right? Because you're not at the behest of investors or a studio or even a specific sort of benchmark or target and engagement. Whereas in a massive production, you get test audiences that inform the way a movie may be edited, or even major story choices that may be made because they are trying to guarantee some return on investment. I think it's super encouraging to hear that you're so engaged in a process of looking for feedback, and that you really believe that it made the film better. That's really neat at this level and in this sort of arena of filmmaking.
Yeah. So if while you're listening to this podcast, and if you're working on any piece of yours, I deeply encourage you to share your piece with other people, maybe not too many, not incredibly many, and collect the feedback from those that you trust.
Yeah, I would very much agree with that. Just like show people that you trust and they will give you important feedback, and you can always choose not to take it. I think it's a great way to go about making a short film, especially when you're not tied down by studios and people investing in your movie, like Tim said.
Yep, absolutely.
So one of the things that really stood out to me, not only like your references to other films, the intertextual stuff that we've already talked about, but the originality of your costume design. I think like some of the images that you intended to be familiar are familiar, but the image of the white hooded figure was very unique to your film. I don't think I've ever seen costume design quite like this. So was that
very striking?
Yeah, was that inspired by something else, or did you come up with this look or just for this short?
So honestly, the costume design was a very intuitive decision. Basically, it felt like a blend of different inspirations and personal experience, kind of like your subconscious upcycling everything you've ever seen or felt. And it's hard to pinpoint some specific inspirations, although I will later on. First of all, the mask is symbolizing disconnection. So for me, it was the best way to visually, I would say, interpret this feeling of losing touch with your passions or inner spark. And whenever it happens, it's as if you're losing sight of who you are, and your reflection becomes unfamiliar. So this, I would say, was the main idea for the mask and one of the major ideas for the costume design. And I would say that the costume itself the fabric and this, I would say, airy look. I think that I took a lot of inspiration from actually traditional Kazakh national dresses, the way they flow and the, I would say, very light and airy type of fabric. And at the same time, the costume itself, the way it's very hard to actually say if it's a skirt or if these are pants. I think I'd be lying if I didn't mention that one of my biggest inspirations that we were actually discussing with the costume designer was Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yeah, exactly. So while I was trying to explain my idea to the costume designer, which is actually an incredibly talented artist, filmmaker, Aidana Mehdi, who's also Kazakh, by the way. So I realized that the best way to describe the costume that I'm aiming for, like visually, and show the reference would be basically a bunch of different costumes from this TV show, Avatar. So it had some influence too. So at the end of the day, I just thought it looked cool. Yeah, and I would say that sometimes you just need to trust your intuition and kind of aesthetic instinct, and it would say more than logic ever could.
And I know we're doing this.
I'll just jump in and say that I also found that in the edit, in the final product, I found a very engaging parallel between that figure and the blank screenwriting page that your main character was staring at on the screen. This sort of white, featureless, potentially like scary concept, which I think is an interpretation that's right there. But like we talked about before, I love that it didn't necessarily come into your original planning.
Actually, I absolutely love this interpretation. And speaking of genres, the way the costume figure is very scary at the very beginning, but at the end of the day, it's just a part of your own self, that there's actually nothing to worry about. You just gotta reconnect. So that's actually a very beautiful interpretation. Thank you.
Well, so I think that's very poignant what you just said there, Assel, because I think you introduce this figure as potentially scary. You don't actually denote any real scariness, but I think you play with our expectations of like what we would normally expect from a figure like this. And I think people are pretty scared of what to find when they look deep inside themselves, right? And I think so that fear can exist metaphorically and literally with this figure.
Yeah. I would say that in the process of creating something, fear is one of the biggest feelings that you would ever face, and I'm glad that my short film can actually bring some light upon that. So I'm very happy that you guys actually felt this and actually came up with these ideas or feelings, and they actually very deeply resonate with the kind of initial idea of FACELESS.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad we understood it. I'm glad we got it.
Yeah. We try our best.
Yeah, sometimes we miss, but
now before we move away from costume design, I hate to spring this on you, but we have to talk about the other most important costume choice in this, which are of course the cat boxers. Can you tell us about those?
Of course, yeah. I was waiting for this question. Finally, someone is asking me about that. So basically, in my mind, it was very funny, and whenever the audience laughs at this joke during screenings, I'm incredibly happy that it was actually funny, and it's actually funny for other people as well. So yeah, cat shorts. So these were the best shorts I could find because I really wanted the cats to be visible enough. So and I was incredibly lucky with the cast and the kind of the funny dance that he does in that scene. It was actually his own interpretation and his own idea. There was also actually another alternative of the dance, this kind of TikTok dance through this audio podcast. I can't really show it, but yeah. But we decided to go with this wave dance. Yeah, finally. I was waiting for this question.
So when you say that you wanted the cast to be big enough, what I'm really hoping is that like your costume designer was like, all right, I've got like 5 options of cat shorts. And you were like, no, too small. I don't like that cat.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it's actually, it's very similar. It's very similar to the truth. There was a similar situation, but with the ties. Okay, so look at the black one, look at the red one, look at the striped one, which type of office tie we want. It's actually interesting how deeply, while directing, especially a small production indie short film, how deeply you are engaging with the costumes and every single detail, literally every single detail.
That makes you a true auteur then. You got your fingerprints on all of it.
Yeah, it's very Fincherian. So, I mean, I guess so moving on, we want to talk about, so like on the whole, looking at this now that I know you're in the festival run and you're still moving the film around, which is a big part of the process, but in terms of its production and lock in the end, what are some lessons you learned from the experience of this film? What was new to this one that you're going to carry forward to the next one?
So I would say that the most surprising lesson for me was how personal filmmaking can be, and at times actually felt like my film was a mirror of my own like internal journey. And while posting, for example, the casting call, while I was kind of describing the character, it almost felt like exposing myself out there. So that was extremely unexpected. And then another interesting lesson that I found out for myself. So basically, I realized that I create for the audience. While I know that sometimes filmmakers create pieces to express, for example, themselves, actually, my biggest joy came from moving others. So basically, by the film, I was trying to inspire, uplift, kind of intrigue with maybe the horror elements, make people laugh, kind of make this piece about AI more hopeful and uplifting, and create the corresponding tone to it. So yeah, overall, it taught me kind of a bit of everything. So mostly I would say how to trust my vision and how to make other people believe in it as well. So that was actually a big one. When you are, I would say, not so confident or maybe shy about your idea or about basically any creative piece, it's a completely other struggle. But
Right.
this experience, I would say, taught me that sometimes you need to be more open, and sometimes you need to trust others much more that you do, and trust, first of all, your own self, and that your idea is actually awesome. And yeah, it's worth pitching, or it's worth submitting places. So that was actually the big one. So if you're listening to it right now, and if you are not sure about submitting this or that, do it.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of great points. I think allowing yourself to be vulnerable and allowing for feedback, and also having confidence and clarity in your own ideas are some of the most paramount traits you can have as a director. It sounds like you're moving forward with a lot of cool ideas here. I just want to say from Tim and I both, we both really loved your film, and I think my first interpretation was just how technically well made it was. So that comes back to your editing, that comes down to your color and your sound design and even your acting performances and your costume design. So overall, great job, Assel, on this film. I'm looking forward to seeing it when it comes to St. Catharines in a month.
Awesome. So first of all, thanks Pix Festival, and thank you guys for hosting me and for having this incredibly deep conversation. I'm incredibly happy that you guys not only loved the film, but also felt something that I was trying to make people watching the film actually feel. So at the end of the day, I personally believe that there are no wrong interpretations. It's just the way that the movie makes you feel. And that's all. So basically, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Tay said, that when we first saw it there in Toronto, you sort of immediately impressed by the editing on display and the production. But as we've talked about it, in rewatching it leading up to this recording, sort of started to realize how it's a fairly rich text, right? There are different ways that you can look at it and different ways that you can take it, and that's just been proven by this discussion, which has gone in a couple different directions, and there's, I think, been a couple nice surprises for each of us, which we always love. So this has been fantastic. I'll agree with Tay. To wrap up, I know we like to do this if we can, so Assel, do you have a recommendation, anything sort of in film, anything you think people should check out?
Sure. So, all right, guys. If you're into stories about AI and technology, I highly recommend the feature movie Her by Spike Jonze. So, it was actually one of the biggest inspirations for FACELESS, and it's a beautiful exploration of loneliness and technology. So, this is what I loved, exploring both basically an emotional state and with some sci-fi component to it. So, and if you are curious about Central Asian culture, I suggest watching an amazing short that I've actually fell in love with, and I was lucky enough to catch it at PIX, which is Double Eyelids. So it really captures so first of all, the culture, and then the beauty of the region, and then the cinematography, everything is just amazing about it. So I would recommend that one for sure.
Yeah, Tim and I had the pleasure of seeing that as well, and the visuals alone are absolutely breathtaking, and the film was very interesting as well thematically, and I'm sure culturally speaking, a lot even went over my head, but I still was very fascinated in learning so much more. That I had no idea that there was such conflict in those regions, and it was really cool to learn about that through that film.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't wait for the next year of Peaks, and if you are listening to it right now, absolutely check out the Peaks screening this June in Niagara.
Yeah, we'll as always, we'll have all of that info down in the show notes, in the description of the video. where you can find out more info about Peaks. If Double Eyelids is available to watch for the general public right now, we will link it down there. If not, it's currently in its festival run as well, and you have to keep an eye, but we'll give you info about how to follow the filmmaker. And on that note, just before we wrap up, Assel, if people wanted to follow you and keep an eye on your work, do you have an Instagram or a website or somewhere that they should keep track of you?
Absolutely. So, first of all, I have a website, which is my first name, my last name.com, which is asselakhmetova.com. And my Instagram page is Hypnovision, which is HIPNO Vision. I also have the LinkedIn, by the way, if anyone would be interested. Speaking of Faceless, we have Faceless short. All right, guys, I'll just double check the domain
Yeah, no problem.
and double check the exact address, and then basically re-record it, because on Instagram there were so many cool usernames that were already taken. Okay, all right.
No problem.
All right, and speaking about Faceless, you can check out our Instagram, which is faceless.shortfilm, and also our website, which is facelesshortfilm.com.
Great. Thanks so much, Assel. All that information is down below. You can click any of the links there to find Assel's website, the Faceless website, the social media handles, and the LinkedIn. That'll do it for us here on the 4th episodes of the Peaks Film Festival podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We will catch you next time.